Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to talk about and explain to you everything you need to know about fear. Now, fear has many components, but the main three that we usually talk about are number one, the fear of being stuck for the rest of your life with any type of discomfort. Number two, the fear of going backwards to square one. And number three, the fear of developing a new theme. As we all know, OCD can make it feel like in a matter of seconds, like you've made no progress, and people are deeply afraid of being stuck for the rest of your life. So underneath those underlying fears, the fear of social rejection, the fear of not being in love, the fear of going to jail, the fear of dying, there is usually the fear, which is the fear of being stuck for the rest of your life. In this video, I'm going to be using one of the Ellis books, How to Control Your Anxiety Before It Controls You, talk about my personal experience, and break down why wearing the physical symptoms of discomfort, physical symptoms of anxiety, blurry vision, heart palpitations, and anything in between, depersonalization, derealization, chronic shame, chronic guilt, groinal responses, anywhere, anytime, any place, is the exposure for fear, and in time, breaking down those dogmatic, overgeneralization, black and white beliefs that we hold about physical symptoms of anxiety and any other type of discomfort. Before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button down below. Let me know what you think about fear. This is something that held me back for a really long time. And because it's so subtle and can hit you so quickly, it's so easy to fall back into that cycle. This is a completely applicable for both forms of GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, and panic disorder, which are all underlying fear driven by the fear of being stuck in discomfort for the rest of your life with all the avoidance behaviors and compulsive running in between. So, this book right here, How to Control Your Anxiety Before It Controls You, is not on the reading list. I always recommend to read the books in order in the reading list. Once you're done with those, you can go through some of the other recommendations I make. This book, some of the anger books, the relationship books, Ellis's autobiography, other books of Stoicism, whatever you want to do. This is just an adjunct to the books I've already read and have taught me a lot about learning how to sit with discomfort, breaking down beliefs. Now, I want to go to one of the pages on here. So what I tend to do is, when I'm going through the books, I am a highlighter. I like to highlight and go back and look at things. So when I'm making videos, I have a good understanding of what I want to talk about. This is very important for me because it gives me a background about how to explain the knowledge in an applicable way where I take Ellis's tools and tweak them and formulate them for OCD, because there are things in here that just won't be possible for OCD. Where he says in different books, walk around, dispute all day. That wasn't particularly made for OCD sufferers because that is compulsive and pushing away. So we've had to tweak this here and there throughout the years, working with thousands of people and understanding that the belief systems behind fear, not wanting to feel uncomfortable, is driving that cycle. So on page 55, and then in this chapter is called Disputing Your Anxiety, Creating Beliefs. And inside this particular section is practical and pragmatic methods of disputing your irrational beliefs. So I want to read you a couple things before we go through a very practical way how to break down the fear. To dispute your irrational belief number two. Now, the reason why it's called irrational belief number two, also known as your secondary emotional disturbance. So let's say you have the fear of going to jail or fear of dying. And because of that, there's chronic anxiety. On top of that will be a secondary irrational belief, such as if I experience anxiety for the rest of my life, this is horrible, this is terrible, I can't stand it, this is the worst thing ever. So you have a secondary irrational belief stemming off of that original belief, the fear of going to jail. So to dispute your secondary irrational belief, you can also logically challenge them. How does it follow that if I'm anxious, it is terrible and I can't stand it? My answer, it doesn't. It is most unfortunate that I suffer from anxiety about my anxiety because I don't like feeling this way. But it is not so bad. It's not so bad that it must not exist. I can stand it and it still have some happiness. It is foolish to think that a bad feeling, the feeling of anxiety, makes me a bad person. And that's another video. If you want to learn more about breaking down good and bad people, go to our acceptance playlist and watch me break down the myth of self-esteem. Other moderators such as Kirsty in the past, great videos, Rob, and so forth. To dispute my irrational belief number two, you would also pragmatically question them. Where will it get me if I believe that I absolutely must not be anxious and I am a no good person when I am? Nowhere. It will get me nowhere. All it will do is create more anxiety about my anxiety. Now, the rest of this page is going to explain how to break this down and go into your effective new philosophy, which is experiencing anxiety is unpleasant, but as there are no universal principles stating that one should not experience anxiety, it's not the end of the world. Now, before I go into the next page, which is the actual dib sheet, so the similar page from, what do you know? This book right here, How to Stubbornly Refuse. As you could tell, I really like Ellis. Ellis is the principles of Ellis applied. The keyword applied have been the best thing that has ever happened to me. My OCD suffering has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. Not OCD itself, because OCD itself without any tools is like a malignant cancer without any treatment. It's not good for you, but the journey and the lessons learned from your suffering are good. Now, before I go into that practical example, I do want to talk about how to actually do the exposures needed for fear. And as I said in the beginning of the video, there are no exposures necessary. The exposures for this are wearing it, all discomfort, all physical symptoms of anxiety, that includes depersonalization and derealization, all feelings of confusion, feelings of tiredness and exhaustion, feelings of shame and guilt and self-damning, feelings of depression and groinal responses, and anything else in between. Anger sensations, overly frustrated sensations, overly jealous sensations. Everything that bothers us comes with a sensation that we don't like. That way we run from it, because with OCD and anxiety-based disorders, as we say, it feels as real as it can get. So we do everything we can to run from that. So the exposure is, I'm going to bring this with me everywhere as if I didn't have OCD. It's not about ignoring it. It's a big misconception. You can't ignore it. It's going to be there in the forefront of your mind. So, take that onion layer off where, oh my gosh, I have to ignore this. Nick says ignore it. I'm not saying ignore it. I'm saying it's going to piss you off. It's going to be in the forefront of your mind. It's going to be me, my suffering, and then the world. Not me and just the world. You will not be present as you'd like. You're not going to be able to concentrate in the manner you'd wish. And all of this is okay in time when you learn how to wear it. So let's go to the practical example. We're actually using the ABC of rational emotive behavioral therapy, breaking it down into rational principles. So we have activating events plus belief systems equals C, emotional consequence. Many times many people have heard me say this. It's very important to reiterate this. What does that mean? Most people, understandably so, biologically, culturally, the way we've been raised and reared, people think that A, the activating adversities in our life, frustrations, people talking down about us, not being accepted, feeling anxiety, equals our emotional consequence, which is depression, anxiety about our anxiety, anger, rage, shame, guilt. But when you actually break that down, the number one thing perpetuating this cycle is our belief systems, our irrational beliefs. So, literally, I just did this for this video. I was at a coffee shop going through this, and I wanted to write down this in my own words. So, the activating event. Briefly summarize the situation as objective as possible. Experiencing high degrees of anxiety about my anxiety, aka the fear of fear, the secondary irrational belief based off, the fear of not being in love, the fear of that and that. So, and this is the primary fear in GAD and panic disorder. What was I most disturbed about? These sensations, that they're horrible, they don't allow me to be present. I need to be present. If I'm not present, I'm not going to be able to focus. My job's high pressured. I'm a high pressure job. I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to live under a bridge. I'm going to have to move in with Rob, and then eventually he's going to throw me off the balcony. Because I would be an annoying, Rob and I living together would be bad news. Bad news. And then you have with Milo and Daisy, my dogs. Sketchy. Now let's talk about the belief systems. This is the thing that I missed for a long time. This was the thing that kept it together. This was the glue of the cycle, okay? You have demands, awfulizing, frustration tolerance, self-downing, other downing, or life downing. So, experiencing this anxiety is 100% awful. It's the worst thing ever, and I can't stand it. It's so terrible that I would rather lose an arm. I would rather have cancer than have physical symptoms of anxiety chronic. I've heard this. I've heard people tell me they cut their arm off. They would, anything you can imagine, because that's how real it feels to the sufferer. I've heard it all. I said it all. I don't want to be here. I can't stand being alive, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So because that belief system is so black and white, it's so awfulizing, catastrophizing, and over the top, this equals an unhealthy emotional pattern such as the major dysfunctional, unhealthy negative emotions, the maladaptive, unhelpful behaviors. So the emotions are anxiety, about my anxiety, panic at those extreme levels, and anger and resentment against myself, saying, I'm so stupid, I should understand this, why can't I get over that? That's self-doubting. And the maladaptive behaviors was overanalyzing. Remember, I do not write ruminating down because I separate ruminating because ruminating is primarily automatic. You can't stop ruminating. I made many videos on this. Go back to our acceptance playlist and watch me speak about rumination and how it's a symptom of the fears, and you'll have to get comfortable with automatic rumination, intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges, as those play out, as the core fears comes down. Same thing. Complaining, I did a lot of complaining, a lot of victim mentality, easy to do, and yelling. Lots of yelling out loud to the world, at anyone that would listen, because I thought that I couldn't feel those sensations pent up inside of me. Now, let's go to the most important part, the disputing of your irrational beliefs. Let's go through every single question on this page. And I want you to think about every single one of these questions that I'm about to ask you. Where is holding this belief getting me? Is it helpful or getting me into trouble? It ain't doing shit. All it's doing is creating more anxiety about my anxiety, perpetuating avoidance behaviors, perpetuating compulsive behaviors, running, hiding, creating more low frustration tolerance, and keeping this cycle alive and well. Where is the evidence to support my irrational belief that it's really awful? Well, it feels awful, but is it really that awful? No, it could be in Auschwitz. I could have been born anytime before 1900, where there was 1950. But imagine living in the year 1000 to 1000 AD. Imagine that, and not being a royal. And then we're not talking about an OCD sense. I'm thinking about the quality of one's life. Yeah, there's a lot worse things out there. Easy to think there's not, but when you break it down with gratitude and stuff. It's why we have Man's Search for Meaning on the reading list. If you want to find our reading list, OCDrecovery.com, underneath the resource tab. Can I really not stand it? This is a funny one because we say things like, I can't stand waiting in line for this coffee. Well, you're going to stand in line, get your coffee so you can stand it. The verbiage, I can't stand it, actually doesn't make sense for 99.9 out of things. Like if your arm is on fire, literally, and you're like, I can't stand this, let me put it out. I mean, you wouldn't even have to. You could let your arm burn off, but I'm just not saying that would be very enjoyable. But you can stand the anxiety. It's not fun, but you can. Okay? Is it logical and does it follow my preferences? Absolutely not. It's a demand, it's a should, it's an ought, it's an overgeneralization, it's black and white thinking. This now leads us to our effective new philosophy. Okay, this is where we break it down with preferences. I'm going to go through all of these as well. Remember, this is all for fear, the fear of feeling any type of physical symptom of discomfort. I would really prefer if I didn't feel anxiety. But as I have been feeling anxiety, all I can do is work on my beliefs, change my behaviors, and hopefully in the future I'm not as anxious. But even if I never recover from anxiety, it's still not the end of the world. It may be bad or unfortunate, but it's not awful. I can stand life while being anxious. I've heard many people say, I can't relax on the couch while being anxious. This is a lie. It's a myth. You can be relaxing while having high levels of anxiety. That's not an oxymoron. You can do that. I've done it. I've been watching Stranger Things. I've watched hiking documentaries, which you get made fun of all the time, in full sheer panic. I was pretty relaxed. I was like, this is a great documentary, even though it felt like I was about to fall off a cliff. So you can do that. It's not what people think. So people have a belief system. In order to be relaxed, they have to be in this blissful state. It's just not real. It's not real. I don't like it, but I can stand it. I can enjoy many things. I can accept myself as a fallible human being that may from time to time experience anxiety. First part of accepting this is accepting you have OCD. It is more than likely genetic and a disorder. And even when you recover from it, which means the absence of chronic suffering, there still are chances where it could rear its head and kind of get you real quick. That's why being aware and my knowledge of the principles from Ellis and Stoicism have been very beneficial for me. Now, because of your effective new philosophy, breaking down, you have new functional, healthy emotions. and new healthy behaviors, which are concern instead of over-concern and panic, disappointment instead of chronic depression, healthy anger and annoyance instead of rage and resentment, healthy sadness, healthy envy, sorrow. These are all emotions that where the pendulum swing is swinging in a healthy manner. Excuse me. The further it swings all the way out here, the more unhealthy it becomes. A lot of people ask me, did you lose your emotions when you became more stoic? Absolutely not. I laugh, I cry. I'm a human, but those don't go to these extreme levels that they used to before. And anger was a big one for me as well. So that is so key. And I want to read the last paragraph from this chapter, which is, if you use these forms regularly, particularly when you are first learning the principles, remember, it will help you with your problems of anxiety. You will become adept at finding and disputing your irrational beliefs and arriving at an effective new philosophy, effective emotions, and behaviors. Thank you so much for watching this video. As a quick recap, remember the fear of fear has 3 components. The fear of being stuck for the rest of your life, the fear of going backwards. Remember, OCD is a roller coaster ride that goes all over, and the fear of developing a new theme. Wearing discomfort, all discomfort. I'll say it one more time. Physical symptoms of anxiety, depersonalization, derealization, chronic shame, chronic guilt, anything in between in this, anger, resentment, all the sensations that come with these belief systems that are perpetuated, wearing them anytime, any place, anywhere. Don't let OCD dictate your life. Get married if you want to get married, have children, travel around the world alone, do what you want to do all those things. Always remember, info@ocdrecovery.com if you're interested in our webinar and coaching services. And I'll see you soon. Have a good one, everyone.